Hey mamas, and welcome to the Entering Motherhood podcast. This is your one-stop go-to place for getting you from feeling drained, exhausted, and unfulfilled in motherhood to feeling more energized, organized, and accomplished. That's the vision I continue to navigate towards, and that's the vision we are sharing with you, focusing on holistic alternatives and restructuring your mind, body, and soul from the inside out. I'm your host, Sarah Marie Bilger, a wife, mom of two, mechanical engineer, VBAC mom, and doula, serving mamas through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. If you're here for this, if you're as pumped up as I am and searching for that fire that you know is deep inside of you, then let's go. Let's uncover what it truly means to enter motherhood. You are a rock star. I believe in you. Let's doula this. Let's crank it up a notch and let's kick it into high gear together. Hey mamas, how are you? Welcome back to the Entering Motherhood podcast. In this episode, we're talking with Gina Mundy, who is an attorney that specializes in childbirth cases. But what's really interesting about this episode is she has compiled her 20 years of experience into writing a book to use her experience to create this book for parents that are preparing to go through childbirth, and ultimately things that we can do to avoid a lot of these situations that she has seen. And what's really cool is that she had said that in none of her cases has she seen doulas being there, because we have this pre-existing relationship with clients and we educate the families and we can let them know in detail different options and help them make these decisions and really go through this time. So I know that you're going to enjoy this episode. Here we go. Hello, and welcome to Entering Motherhood. I am super excited to have you here today and get the conversation started. So how about you go ahead and introduce yourself for the listeners?
Thank you, Sarah, for having me on your podcast. I'm very excited. My name is Gina Mundy. I live in Clarkston, Michigan, probably about an hour north of Detroit. I have 3 kids, a little older, 19-year-old girl, 15-year-old girl, and a 9-year-old son. I've been married for 21 years, and I have also been an attorney specializing in childbirth cases for 21 years. So basically, I graduated law school, passed the bar, got my first job, and just stumbled on this profession. But I had just gotten married, and having a baby was on my radar. So I wanted to learn all about these childbirth cases. And just so your audience understands what a childbirth case is, it's when something goes wrong during the birth of a baby, whether it's a mistake or it's a complication, but baby's not born healthy. Baby may pass away during childbirth. Some sad cases, mom passes away during childbirth. So my job for the past 21 years is to come in and find out what went wrong, why did something go wrong? More importantly, what could have been done so baby would have been born healthy, or, mom been around to raise her baby. So those questions have taken me all over the United States and almost every healthcare system, basically hashing out labor and delivery, every aspect of it with the delivery teams and whatnot. So I took that experience and I wrote a book to expecting parents. It's called A Parent's Guide to a Safer Childbirth. So the purpose of writing that book is to help parents have healthy babies and make sure the mistakes and complications that I have seen for the past 21 years does not happen during the birth of their baby. So basically, instead of getting involved in the aftermath of something going wrong, I'm trying to get involved before childbirth to prevent anything from going wrong.
Yeah. And that's so powerful in itself, of being able to say look, these are the things that we've seen, these are the things that could occur. And these are some things that we can really prevent a lot of that. And I think, obviously there are some situations that are unavoidable or you can't prevent it. And there's just, not really a reason for it, but there are other things that maybe it is going on and happening. But let's backtrack a little bit. So you said right after school, this is the work that you got into. So this was pre-kids, no kids, anything. What was that journey like starting to see these cases and getting into this work before you were starting to enter motherhood for the first time yourself?
Oh, great question. Not easy. So given what I had to see, it also raised red flags, warnings like, okay, wait a minute, having a baby is on my radar. Got to make sure this does not happen to my kids. So just so your audience understands too, when I was hired in for my job, I was hired into a team of over 20 people, and that's all we did were baby cases. So up until I was hired in, I had never heard of a childbirth attorney or understood that this was a very specialized area of law. So in terms of how it impacted me, so basically I wrote this in the book, but baby lawyers typically have elective C-sections because we cannot relax because of what we have seen and what we know. However, back in 2004, when I went to request my elective C-section at 39 weeks, the doctor's like, yeah, so that was big back then, not really, it was kind of controversial, and clearly my doctor was not on board with it. So he wouldn't schedule me for one. Now, my friends that were childbirth attorneys, they just went to their OBs and they were like, we have herpes. Back then in 2004, if you had herpes, you got your elective C-section. But I'm like, I'm not telling my doctor I have herpes. So what happened is, middle of the night, contractions just started, and either I slept through the easy one, the ones that didn't hurt, and I finally woke up. But I woke up in hardcore labor, so we rushed to the hospital, and then again, I think it was a hard time relaxing. Baby's heart rate dropped a couple times, and they were like, "Okay, Gina, we'll just give you your C-section." So they sectioned me pretty quick. But yeah, it was very hard for me to relax during labor, given what I know. However, C-section, major abdominal surgery. My kids, I wrote the book, really, it started with the thought of if I was, not in town when they gave birth to my grandkids, I'm like, I got to start writing down, what I know. But my kids, I wouldn't tell them, okay, you need to have a C-section or something like that. I wrote the book on how to have a safe childbirth for my kids, because I do think that's a great option. Obviously, it's the natural way we're supposed to give birth. For me, which makes that your question great, much different.
Yeah, it's so interesting to like hear like you're so consumed with all of this like
Oh, it
cases
is.
that are happening that that is in your mind like, well, to avoid all of it, have a scheduled cesarean. But have you ever had cases dealing with cesareans as well?
Right. So I've never seen or heard of a case that involved an elective C-section at 39 weeks. So
Yeah.
typically in our baby world, it is known as the lowest risk of injury to baby. So that's our kind of line of thinking. It was just yes, hard for me, very difficult to recover from the first C-section. But the way we think, it was like, okay, lowest risk of injury to baby, given what we've seen. That's kind of our, why we think that way.
What are some of the most common issues that you're seeing?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Chapter 11 of my book goes over the top 10. The number one most common issue in a legal baby case is Pitocin. Pitocin is used to induce mom's labor by making her uterus contract. Her body then follows the cues and is supposed to go into labor. But by far, that is in most of my childbirth cases. Most of those patients also get an epidural. So I have seen Pitocin inductions gone wrong for a very long time. So I did include a chapter in my book on how to have a safe Pitocin induction, because I think while doctors across the board, they agree that Pitocin is okay for a mom that's in labor, they don't agree on how to administer it or order it. So your different doctors like to run their Pitocin inductions different. So this is, Pitocin scares me, obviously. But again, I wrote this book starting, with my kids. And I'm like, okay, well, if they choose Pitocin induction, that's their decision, but this is how you're going to have a safe one. You got to keep in mind, based upon what I have seen and what I do, how my kids would be prepared for childbirth is very different than how a family would traditionally, prepare. However, I basically started writing everything down and then got this book out to expecting parents. So now everybody can be prepared as if you were if you were an offspring of a childbirth attorney.
Yeah. What was kind of like the most surprising thing, like in writing the book and really reflecting back on the work that you have done? And like, what was kind of like, I guess, your favorite part of writing it?
Wow, that's a great question. Favorite part of writing it. It was, trying to piece together what information parents really needed to know for a safer childbirth was something that, I had to create. So I started with basically a Word document with one blank page and a little typing thing that was like ding, 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 staring at me. And I'm like, how am I going to save babies? Also, the lessons learned from the baby cases as a lesson, this is what families can learn to help prevent it from happening in the future. So chapter 1, I go over like the main lessons from the baby cases. So I had to go back through my baby cases and remember, the families, what happened and whatnot, and then try to figure out, okay, what can we learn from this and whatnot. So that's chapter 1. Now, chapter 1 is so incredibly important that it is actually on my website for free, downloadable, send it, do whatever, because those are the lessons from the baby cases. Now, each lesson then is a subsequent chapter of the book. So that was kind of fun, structuring it. So I got my lessons. And then, for instance, lesson 1 is that families need to have an understanding of childbirth and how to make good decisions before they go into labor, and delivery. And so then chapter 2 would be everything that I find important about labor and delivery and childbirth. These are the facts I rely on when I look at a new case and I'm like, was the care good care or was the care bad care? These are the things I rely on. So get much different than you're going to read in a normal pregnancy book, but good information that parents should have, an understanding of, because many times in these cases, families are just so close to a healthy baby, whether it's one decision or minutes, the decision making is so incredibly important. But I will say, so that's the lessons in chapter 1. Now, chapter 11, when I talk about the reoccurring issues and facts, that's a separate lesson with separate information. But one of the things I found probably most interesting in staring at everything, I had this like aha moment, because I did want to include this in the book, because if you know the reoccurring issues, the reoccurring facts in my cases, it gives parents like this heightened sense of awareness. It helps to activate their intuition to, again, make good decisions with their delivery team. But one super crazy important thing that every parent must know is that the mistakes or complications that occur during childbirth occur after mom's water breaks. So if your doctor recommends breaking your bag of water, it's extremely important that you ask the doctor, do you want to break my bag of water because there's a medical reason, or do you want to be home for dinner? Because even if you're in labor, your bag of water can be intact. And usually that means that baby is comfy, they're still in their normal environment and whatnot. Because baby is in your uterus, and then you have the placenta that's attached to the uterus. And then you have like the baby's lifeline, which is like the umbilical cord. It's like a hose that's transferring, blood, which is how baby gets its oxygen-rich blood to baby. And then the hose then, or the umbilical cord, then takes the unoxygenated blood, the waste blood, sends it back to the placenta, and they just give it back to mom. Yeah, it's a little more technical, but for our purposes, that's good. Anyway, everything is surrounded by the amniotic fluid. So baby's been in the same environment, but you drain the amniotic fluid out. All the fluid that everything's been, used up is now gone. That changes the environment in the uterus, and it can make baby more vulnerable to something happening. So it's very important, I feel like people will rupture a mom, or moms agree to it, like no big deal. And and staring at my baby cases, it was just an aha moment, like, wait a minute. And I went back to my first case in February 2003. And almost all of the time, complications are after the water breaks.
Yeah, and I think that's like one of those things that like a lot of parents are, maybe informed about a little bit, or like they're scared that it's going to accidentally be ruptured, or there's like those stories of like providers being sneaky and saying that they're going to do a cervical check and actually like rupture their waters. And so
Totally.
like being like informed of those things and being able to like look out for it and like making sure that you're relaying that information to your provider is so key. So what would you recommend, like having conversations with your provider and like speaking about these things with them beforehand? Like what would you kind of say like is good to look out for, like when working with a provider or choosing a doctor?
You mean as it relates to breaking water or just choosing a doctor in general?
Just, I mean, in general, like obviously
Okay.
like the breaking the water, but like how do you start like
Yeah.
these conversations and to make sure like you're actually finding somebody who's going to be cautious and aware of these things?
Okay. So I have an entire chapter on how to pick the good doctor, chapter 4. It's literally called, I believe, The Good Doctor. And I have analyzed OBGYNs for 21 years because obviously they're a big part of my cases. They head the delivery team. The delivery team on the day that you go into labor, they are responsible for bringing your baby safely into this world. Their care in my cases, it is their care that is at issue and analyzed more than any other aspect of the case. So it is super, super important that you have a good doctor that is heading this team who's responsible to bring your baby again into this world safely. So I go through an entire doctor analysis. There's things like, listen, a good reputation does not equate to good care. Okay, you got to get that out of your head. Everybody's like, oh, but he delivered like 10 other kids and whatever. But I give a story in the book. It's called The Yoda Imposter. And I was meeting with a nurse and we were talking about a case, and she had left the hospital system a couple of years earlier. And she saw a doctor's name and she said, oh, that doctor, we call him Yoda. And I'm like, do you call him Yoda because he looks like Yoda? I didn't think we were talking about the same doctor, but the witness clarified that we were in fact talking about the same doctor. She said, he's a very wise doctor that does such great things for his patients. And I'm like, what? I go, you might want to Google Yoda. And what had happened is after she left the hospital system, hundreds of patients started to come forward and actually tell not so good stories about Yoda. So but they were all fooled. And then one by one, everybody's instincts, intuition, all that stuff that you really need to pay attention to, especially as a, expecting mom, new mom, started to come out. And so, yeah, so reputation, good reputation does not equate to good care. So when I'm doing my doctor analysis, like I just said, I fall back on intuition, instincts. But, to help activate your instincts and intuition, again, you do have to know something about childbirth and pregnancy and learn about it, and educate yourself so you can activate it and make those, kind of like, is this legit or not? What this doctor's saying. Communication, doctors, communication is so important when you're trying to pick a good doctor, because if your doctor is super short with you, or they're not explaining anything to you, or if you seem like a burden, or if you can't ask your doctor certain questions because you're either embarrassed or you don't want to be, again, a burden, that's a problem. Because listen, your doctor is not at the hospital, but they are running your delivery team. They're head of your delivery team. So what happens is the nurse is bedside with you, or the resident is bedside with you, or the midwife is bedside with you. And if there's a concern or you're progressing or they want to update your doctor, they must typically call the doctor and update them. And if there's a concern or something, they have to effectively communicate to make a plan, make a recommendation or whatnot. So if your doctor doesn't know how to effectively communicate, that's going to be that's when stuff falls through the cracks, because the doctor, how he's communicating with you is likely how he's communicating with his delivery team. So just keep that in mind. But then I go through 20 questions to ask your doctor. These are 20 questions that we typically ask in a lawsuit or a case. And really it's to help us figure out, is this a good doctor, bad doctor? It may help us, discredit a doctor or bolster a doctor's credibility, figure out whether we can stick them in front of a jury or not. But based upon the responses to these questions, this might be that time where you're like, I don't like that response, or that's a good response, or, whatever it may be. But picking that good doctor is so incredibly important. And I've had a lot of people say they've read chapter 4 of my book and they're going to utilize that, information in other areas, because I have spent so much time with doctors. But going back then to the discussion on if they recommend you that, they break your water, there might be a legit reason why they want to break your water. Maybe there's concerns about the baby and they want to place something called an internal monitor, and they can't do that without rupturing your bag of water. And if they're putting an internal monitor on, that is the most adequate way to, assess how your baby is doing inside you. So that might be a legit reason. Or let's say you're having a Pitocin induction, and this is a doctor who likes to start Pitocin, and then he likes then to, break your water, because sometimes, especially if you've already had a baby already, the combination of those two really can jumpstart your labor, and that might be important for a certain reason. So, there are reasons. You just have to have an understanding of, is that a good reason, a bad reason, or whatnot, and you probably don't want to actually say to your doctor, do you want to be home for dinner? You don't want to, and if the doctor's offended by that, that's great. The doctor really should be offended by that. But listen, in my cases, I've heard both medical reason, or that's how they do it because they want to be home for dinner. So those doctors, I really don't agree with that. But, hopefully your doctor's like, I would never do that. Perfect. Just checking.
Yeah. What is it like working with the families and your clients of these cases and having these conversations with them after the fact?
So when I have to sit down with the families, I have to do that in every single case. Now, I represent the hospital, the doctors, the nurses, the delivery team. Now, people think because I wrote a book to families that I am the attorney for the families. I'm telling you, to have a more effective book representing the hospitals, the delivery teams, and understanding everything that happens, definitely makes for, I think, a more accurate book. But I do, as an attorney for the hospitals and whatnot, I do have to sit down with the families and go over in detail the day that their baby was born, and, or the day they lost their wife, sometimes mom. Yeah, those are really hard conversations. Listen, I'm a human. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. By far, the hardest part of my day, typically after depositions of families, I'm cashed. I can't mentally, emotionally continue on, doing anything that requires thinking or whatnot. Those are the days I go home and I typically hug my kids a little bit tighter.
What do you feel is like one of the, I know that you've like talked about like communication and things like that, but what do you feel like providers or the hospitals can be doing to really offset a lot of these situations as well?
Great question. Every hospital system is different. I always give my recommendations on maybe how to make it better, but everybody is so different. I definitely think that really making a difference starts with the families and getting ready for childbirth and having an understanding of it. Because here's the deal, delivery team does not just hang out at patient's bedside during labor. Now they have the baby's heart rate graphing at the nurse's station, the doctor lounge. Your doctor typically would check it remotely, which is a great indication on how your baby is doing. But the teams get busy, so it's important that, parents are ready. In my book, I talk about designating a baby advocate. So that could be husband, my book is written in such a way that it will help husbands make sure they bring their wife home, to make sure they bring their healthy baby home. And husbands instinctually want to protect their wife and baby. So, I think starting with the families, designating a baby advocate. Now, if husband, he doesn't want to be part of those decision making, big decisions, or whatnot, or maybe grandma is more equipped. Grandmas, they love my book because why? I wrote it so I have healthy grandkids. So other grandmas who are probably around the same age as me are like, yippee, I know how to step in now to make sure I have healthy grandkids. So, have grandma do it or a friend or whoever. But I think it's having like a second set of eyes on baby is huge because mom goes into like labor land, which is completely normal. She is focusing on mentally and physically delivering baby. She needs to stay calm. She needs to stay relaxed. If she knows a hubby has read my book and is protecting her, knows what questions to ask, knows what to do to protect her so she can do her thing, I mean, she's going to be so much better off during labor, And plus, I mean, let me tell you, if that was my husband, I would be like, I love him so much. Oh my gosh, he was the most amazing husband during childbirth. So, I think it starts more with the families. And listen, sometimes, in another factor, for instance, in my baby cases, this is another common issue, another common fact, is that these units are very busy when something goes wrong. So when I sit down with the delivery team, they'll be like, I remember that day. It was super busy that day. So what does that mean? They're running hard, they're running thin. They're doing the best they can do, but they can't just stare at one patient at the bedside. They have all these patients, especially when the unit is busy. So if parents have an understanding or husband has an understanding of what's important, what to look for, what questions to ask, what to do, again, especially from my perspective, it's going to help them have a healthy baby.
Yeah. How has this work really, I mean, like obviously, like you're saying, you're writing this for your grandkids, like you're writing this, for future generations and everything. Like, how has this all really, like, how do you feel like all of this has really like shaped your life personally? And if you weren't doing this work specifically, like how different things would be?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I feel like you stumped me with your question.
Sorry.
I'm like, hold on, I have to think now. They're not generic questions that I get on a daily basis that I got to respond to. Listen, I'll tell you, and this is probably the weirdest freaking response, but it's so true. Listen, I've always struggled with what I do, and it is hard. It is hard seeing, these families and these tragedies happen over and over. People have asked me, especially when I was pregnant, how do you do it? And I've just never, I've always kept with it. I've always had this fascination or whatnot. And then we ended up having like a near family tragic event where a baby, it was a childbirth situation. We went about, 20 minutes without knowing whether, baby was going to be okay. And, when that stopped me in my tracks, it was like, okay, that's when writing a book then was on my radar, because when you stop in your tracks, you get out of the grind, you're like, whatever. It was like this aha moment. And then as I continued to write, it became apparent that I did have information that will help parents have a healthy baby. So I write the book, 14 months, thousands of hours. I get up at 3 a.m. I write the book in basically the middle of the night. I'm still a partner at my law firm. I'm still a mom, whatever. And then I get out. See, this is such a convoluted response, but I'm getting to my point. So I'll tell you, to finally be able to take this profession and my knowledge and what I've been through for 21 years, learning about all this, to help other families have a healthy baby, to spare them from what I've watched these families go through. As I said at the beginning of this response, aging has always been, it's very difficult. I'm 48 years old. I'm like, man, I do anything to be like 35. life, you age and, especially in Michigan, your body wants to fall apart. And let's go, actually, where are we? Time's flying. And now it's out there and these families are so appreciative. And I get messages all the time and people just thanking me for getting this out there, telling me they had a healthy baby. So to finally be able to take these years of experience and basically help families have healthy babies, it's been worth the 21 years of being in this industry. And then as I keep saying, it's making me okay with aging because at least I've used my experience to help make the world a better place.
Yeah, I think it's such a unique idea and something that a lot of parents are truly seeking and craving to have. And like you said, like even information for the partner, like maybe mom is reading different things and really kind of like building on like what's going on physically with their own body, but like empowering the partner to really take control and have something that they can be a part of and advocate for. And I personally do doula work, and this is something that's like super beneficial for birth workers and people that are also like, advocating for moms and like being in that space because, we do want to have those healthy moms, healthy babies and have that be happening. And there's so much that's kind of like going on in between all of those layers, and it's not conversations that are talked about. And so like having the book and having that be brought up and having that conversation be started or continued, I should say, like just drawing more attention to it, I think is super helpful and really shifting and changing what could potentially happen.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And by the way, I've not mentioned it yet during this podcast, but as a childbirth attorney, I love doulas. Doulas help bring babies safely into this world. For the past 21 years to this day, I have never had a doula in one of my cases. I have asked my baby lawyer friends. They have never had a doula in any of their cases. You guys have a pre-existing relationship before the big day. You guys love to educate your clients, which obviously that's the subtitle of my book. Parents roll up. I think I've already said this. The delivery team that consists of the people who are scheduled to work that day, they are not at your bedside. You have a doula there who has gotten to know you, and they will help guide you to make those good decisions. Or if the delivery team gives you a couple options and you're like, you have a nurse who's busy trying to give you two options and you're not sure about, well, doulas know a lot. My doula, oh my goodness, I just love doulas. It's funny because I'm like, yes, I meant to say this earlier with you being a doula, because I think it is important that people, if you have resources to have a doula, that you absolutely get a doula. You have just such a great chance of having a healthy baby when you have a doula present.
Yeah. And I mean, exactly like going back to what you were saying, like hospitals do get busy, staff gets busy. There's multiple people like coming in and they need to attend to multiple different rooms. And so they aren't able to sit there at the bedside with you and really discuss all these things and have those conversations with you, like simply because of how they're staffed. And having a doula, having somebody that's literally assigned to you for that purpose, is just, it's just able to like offset that. So that's why I love what I do.
It's
But
absolutely huge. It's absolutely huge what you do. And I'm just going to throw this out there. I know I've never said this on a podcast, and I'll stop a podcast and I'll be like, dang it, I wish I would have said this. But no, like my kids, I will hire doulas for my kids for sure, 100%. I
yeah.
actually already have the doulas picked out, assuming that my kids eventually, as long as the doulas are still around that I love out here. Yeah, no, I already have doulas picked out and everything and who
That's
will be coming my
amazing.
No, I 100%. And it's almost like their shower gift because
Yeah.
I do
Yeah.
believe it is more important. It should be the very first expense. Yes, everybody wants the fancy crib, the fancy stroller, and whatever. A doula can make sure you use all those things at the end of the day.
Yeah, I actually just had like my first baby shower like invite that I had gotten in the mail for one of our friends, and it says on there like donate to her postpartum doula care. So instead
Uh,
of like, because it's their second, and they're like, instead of like all the baby items, we would really appreciate
mhm.
postpartum care. And so they live up in Pennsylvania. We're in South Carolina. And I was like 100% like contacted her doula. And I was like, we're, sending you money towards like postpartum care.
Oh yeah, and yes, and by the way, doulas with both childbirth and postpartum care. Oh, you can, yes, 100. They will make your life so much better. So,
Yeah.
yes, that is a great idea. I've never heard of that before. I love that.
Since like the book coming out, like how has that journey really looked? And like where are you at now? What do you have coming up? Like where can we kind of like figure out what's up and coming with you and with the book and just everything in general?
Oh, yeah, thank you. So, basically, within 3 months, the book became a bestseller. So it's sold around the world. I do podcasts all around the world talking about my book. So yeah, and this book is the book on childbirth. There's also going to be a book on pregnancy that I am in the works. But as I said, I'm very, very busy. So I basically get up, and it's been this way since I started writing. I get up at 3 a.m. every day, and I go to bed about 7 p.m. So, basically I make dinner, I make sure the kitchen's cleaned, and then I'm out. So very long days to make this happen. I was hoping once I got the book out, everything would just kind of, whoo, all by itself. But I've really been enjoying just going on these podcasts because, like you're a doula. Like I love doulas. I want, as a childbirth attorney, people to understand how important doulas are. So, I keep doing these podcasts and whatnot. So, but no matter what is going on, no matter when your audience listens to this, they will always be able to go to ginamundy.com, GINAMUNDY.com. And I will have like links to where you can buy my book. I have a blog there that's also where you can get the first chapter of my book. You can download it. The introduction is that story I told you about, that near family tragic event with the baby. That is a very powerful story, and that's a typical baby case, just so people understand. I think I made that pretty clear, but it also tells like why I wrote the book and whatnot. But yeah, you can find my book right now. The best place is Amazon. I'm doing the audio book this weekend, so that's going to be out. I'm getting so many requests for the audiobook, and I'm like, duh. I mainly listen to audiobooks because I'm so busy. So yeah, I'm like, okay, I got to get the audiobook out. So that's coming out. And then, who knows? I may like throw a course out there just so, hey, this is other stuff besides, that's in my book that would be very beneficial. So, but it'll always be ginamundy.com and whatnot. So. Oh,
Awesome.
and Instagram. You can always follow me on Instagram at Gina Mundy. And that's kind of becoming my platform of choice. I was never a social media person either until I, published the book in June 2023. So now I got to be on social media, and I'm actually starting to enjoy it. I'm getting some great followers, and so I'm trying to get some content up there. So that's been interesting too.
Very awesome. If you could give a new mom a piece of advice or words of wisdom, what would you say?
Oh, 100%. Buy my book. No. So listen, getting ready for childbirth, from what I have seen, is just so incredibly important. If you're anything like me, you've been playing the baby, you were not, I stopped, don't worry, I stopped playing with baby dolls. But when I was a kid, I played with baby dolls, and I dreamed of the day that I would have my first baby. I mean, it's just, you dream of that day your entire life. It's life changing. It's one of the most powerful moments in your life. And then you're a parent, and you never stop being a parent. So, words of wisdom is just get ready for the big day. If you read what's in my book, it's going to help you have a healthy baby. So, get ready and, and enjoy it. Enjoy it for sure.
Cool. Well, thank you so much again for being on here. And obviously, like, there's so much knowledge in your book for people to keep consuming and finding you. And I'll list everything in the show notes, like that you mentioned, like all the places that you are and your website and everything like that. So thank you again so much.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. Your questions were great today. I just love your questions.
Thank you. Thank you, mamas, so much for listening. Remember, you are a rock star. I believe in you. Let's doula this. Let's crank it up a notch and let's kick it into high gear together. Hit that subscribe button, share this episode with a friend, message me, email me, call me, beat me. You know how to reach me. We're doing this, mamas. I am so excited to catch you here next week. This is your one-stop go-to place for helping you find the resources you need to make the best choices for you and your family during pregnancy, birth, and most importantly, postpartum. See you later, mamas.